I stand in awe of you. Oh, I stand in awe of you. Oh, I stand in awe of you. Oh, I stand in awe of you. Just to adore you is our purpose. To make your name higher is our focus. Where we made it complicated, realign us to stand in awe of you. Come on, sing. Oh, I stand in awe of you. 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 Oh, I stand in awe of you. I stand in awe of you. I stand in awe of you. I stand in awe of you.
Are we gonna call? Oh God, that's true.
It could be. Oh, Insta famous. Are we live? We're live. We're live. Hi. I'm Julie McElrath, and I am the president of the Clean Cause Foundation. We support recovery housing initiatives across the country. I'm also a very grateful member of the CARES Advisory Council and have been engaged with this program for, going on 3 years now. Really, really grateful to be a part of this program. Tonight, I have the honor of helping facilitate this conversation with one of my very closest friends, Laura Swann. I want to tell you a little bit about her. Laura is an educator, a therapist, and an author based here in Austin, Texas, whose work sits at the intersection of learning and healing. Over the years, she's guided students, clients, and colleagues through the kinds of moments that shape a life, the breakthroughs, the setbacks, and everything in between, with a steady warmth that people remember long after the conversation ends. Her approach blends practical insight with genuine curiosity, and she is one of the most curious individuals I know. And that curiosity is around how people grow. Whether she's in a classroom, a therapy room, or on the page, or in a setting like this, Laura has a gift for making complex ideas feel approachable and for helping people see themselves a little more clearly. She's also very skilled at creating safe environments. The same gift shapes her book, Men and Emotions. It's a thing. I said that backwards, I know.
No, you didn't.
I did? Right. Did I say it right? Okay. Which opens up one of the most quietly consequential conversations of our time. If you don't have that book, check it out. It's on Amazon. It will change your life. Please welcome Laura Swann.
Oh. Thank you guys very much. Thank you for having me. I was asked to come and speak about shame and addiction. And so here we are. It's a hard topic to broach because there's so much information around it. And which angle you come in is can be real challenging. So we don't have a ton of time, but enough time to do a really good introduction and talk about what it is. I'm going to give you a brief rundown of kind of what the night will look like. We're going to talk about first just what shame is. We'll talk about some of the differences between shame and other feelings that we experience that maybe feel similar, but I'll give you some real distinguishing factors that will help you determine, okay, is it shame, guilt, embarrassment, what does that look like? Then we're going to talk a little bit about how shame gets formed in families. How does a child that grows up in a family, or how does a spouse or a loved one end up taking on that shame and why that happens? We'll talk about that. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the long-lasting effects of shame, and if people don't seek some type of treatment or support or healing around it, what that can do and how it presents in their adult life. Now, the last thing, we'll talk a little bit about healing. I'm comfortable if you guys have some questions during the presentation part of this. I'm comfortable if you raise your hand, we can address the question, but also know that we're going to have a lot of time at the end, and we're going to do a lot of discussion. And sometimes, if you're like me and you probably will forget your question after about 3 minutes and you don't have anything to write it down with, feel free to jump in. But just remember, we have that time at the end. Okay, so let's dive right in, and let's start first with what is shame. And are you guys seeing the what is shame? Okay, so I love this definition of shame. It is the painful feeling that we are flawed, and because of that flawed feeling, that we are unlovable. And the key piece to this is really about feeling unlovable. Something's wrong with us, we're defective, and which makes us unlovable. Anytime a person experiences that, there's this disconnect. And one of every human being's innate needs is to feel connected. And it's really difficult to be connected in shame. So that's the definition. Some of the quick, like you'll see a lot of things talk about, shame is about something's wrong with me. Guilt is more about I did something wrong. The big difference in that is that guilt, most of the time, shame is very secretive. And we're going to talk about all of that, how it grows and, how it gets worse. But shame, most of the time, is very secretive. People don't talk about it. They don't address it. And a lot of times, people don't even know what it is. It's hard to label. So guilt is a little bit more, I did something wrong. And there is a little bit more of a hopeful feeling to that, meaning that if I did something wrong, I can make an amends. I can say I'm sorry and move past it and move forward. Shame is a lot of times has this stuck place to it, like there's not a lot of moving forward because it is about the person, right? If I did something wrong, I can make amends and move forward. But if I am wrong, if I'm bad, flawed person, it's a hard thing to understand how I'm going to move forward from that. So that's kind of the difference between those. How is shame passed on? Shame needs 3 things to grow: silence, secrecy, and judgment. And that includes self-judgment. So judgment from others, self-judgment. Silence, secrecy, and judgment. And we know in addicted families, families who have substance use dependence, we know the 3 rules, right? Don't talk, don't feel, and don't talk, don't... What's the third one? Wait a minute, I have it right here. Next one. Don't talk, don't talk about it, don't have any feelings about it, and don't trust, the third one, the don't trust. So we know all of that's going on in families. So that silence, secrecy, and judgment is really huge when we hide that. A great analogy, and I love this, I use this quite a bit when I'm teaching, is the Petri dish analogy. If you were to take a couple Petri dishes, and in one Petri dish you're going to put shame, and you're going to close the lid on it, and maybe even wrap it up a little bit, maybe tie a rope around it. Then you're going to put it in a dark closet, and you're going to close the door. There's no light. Nobody sees it. It's in there all by itself. That shame is going to just grow out of control. You took another Petri dish, and you put shame in there, and you took it outside, and you put it in the light, and people walked by it, and they were like, oh, wow, look at that little dish down there. I wonder what that's about. I'm curious about that. I wonder if I should stop and talk about that. People are recognizing, maybe people are trying to connect. It's totally different. Shame, when it doesn't have secrecy and it doesn't have judgment, all of those things, it's really difficult for it to grow. So I think one of the things to remember in that, and we'll talk about this more towards the end, is am I holding secrets? You know, we talk about the title of this is so beautiful, you know, it's not mine to hold, right? And how do we walk away from that? What does that look like? And realizing the importance of that secrecy and silence and judgment is a big factor in that. All right, we briefly touched on this. Don't talk about it, don't have any feelings about it, and don't trust. When I talk about shame, I talk a lot about systems because a family is a system. And that system works together, hopefully, for the benefit of specific goals. And it's like any system. I mean, you can have systems in, you know, a restaurant. You can have systems in, you know, with telephones. I mean, everything really kind of has a system in how it works. Families are the same way. And when you have a substance use dependence person in there, it really throws a huge kink into that system and can cause all kinds of, you know, dysfunction in that system. So when we're operating under these rules of don't talk about it, you know, don't have any feelings, you know, don't trust anybody, it's can be a real difficult thing for people to navigate.
Laura, could I ask a
Sure, go
question?
for it.
You know, what you said about the family as a system made me think about how that shame associated with addiction, how it can transfer from one family member to another, right? And you may talk about this later, so just say, you might say to me, Julie, hold on to that because
Yeah.
a second. But, you know, what are some of the first steps a family, that system might make in beginning to break that cycle?
Right, absolutely. Yeah, we're going to talk about that at the end, kind of in the healing thing. I mean, the very first step in any change, whether this is change in a family system or you're trying to change, you know, a behavior around eating, any type of behavioral change, always starts with awareness. It is key. Self-awareness is the foundation for any change. Without self-awareness, we can't change what we don't know, right? So that's the very first thing, and we'll talk about this a little bit more towards the end.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, it just came up.
Yeah, it's such a good question, and everybody is always so curious about that. You know, how do we break this cycle? It's a hard cycle. It can be a hard cycle to break. If all members in the family are all in or even 90% in, is so much easier. What happens is many times you'll get 2 or 3 family members that are in and one family member that's not and one family member that is, you know, completely not. And when you have that, it changes the whole dynamics of how you're going to change that family system. So let's talk about kind of how it's formed and how it gets passed on. Julie talked a little bit about, we pass it down through generations. Absolutely. Even if, like my grandmother, if she was alcoholic and then my mom wasn't, my mom can still pass down the shame from her mother's alcoholism to me. So it can be passed down through generations, even if my family didn't experience that. So this is kind of what happens, and I say a lot of this kind of loosely because families are very different, right? And how shame gets passed down and how it gets formed really depends on the dynamic of the family. So it's not just a blanket statement. You can say it happens this way. It really depends on what's happening within the family. But these are some pretty good generalizations that'll give you a good idea of what it looks like. So anytime we have secrecy, it causes confusion, right? And with that confusion, that most of the time leads to just making up stories, especially if you are a child trying to navigate this. An adult sometimes will have the verbiage and the words to be able to ask some questions that can give it more meaning, but a child, they does not have the sophistication of the brain. The brain is just not sophisticated enough to ask the right questions to get clarity and understand. So kids end up making up these stories about what's happening and what's going on. And many times those stories involve something's wrong with me, I'm flawed. They might get feedback. For example, I grew up in an alcoholic home. My mom was alcoholic, and her alcoholism got severe towards the end of my elementary years, into my junior high, and then way into my adulthood. And I was not allowed to ask questions or, like Julie said, I'm super curious, and even as an adult today, I'm still very curious. And as a child, I was very curious. And I would see something happening, and I saw that it didn't make sense, like I was old enough, maybe 10 or 12 or 8, I could see where 2 and 2 wasn't equal 4, but again, I didn't have the words to put to that. I couldn't name it. And many times I would ask my mom, and the answers I would get were always surrounded by something like, you don't need to ask about that, or don't ask those questions. Laura, you need to. And the story I began to make up about myself was, what's the matter with me? Why do I want to know? Why is my mom telling me X, Y, and Z, and I'm seeing LMNOP? I mean, those are not matching up. So it was really confusing for me, and the story I began to make up was really around something was wrong with me, I'm too much, I ask too many questions, I need to just be quiet and, kind of move out of the scene. So with children, just remember it's a really hard place for them to navigate because they just don't have the resources and the skills and all of the stuff that they need to be able to do that.
Laura, what might, an adult in your life, what might they have said to you that would have helped you better understand that you didn't cause what was happening in your family system?
It's a good question. As long as the addiction is going on in the family, they're not really going to be able to say anything that's going to help, because that's really kind of the first place to, when you're looking at family systems, one of the first things is helping the person with the substance use dependence, and the family as well too. But I don't, I don't, I don't think my family, where they were in their system, could have said anything that would have helped at that time. Now, if that system had changed and my mom got sober and we got treatment and, things were different, I think something she could have not necessarily said, but she could have reacted to it in a different way, because what was happening many times was absolutely happening. It was reality,
Right.
but what was happening was she was questioning my reality. That's not happening. That's not what is going on over there. And that's a really confusing thing for small children when you're questioning and this is my primary caregiver, so of course I want to trust, right?
Yeah. It made me think about, and this might be down the road a bit, as the family begins to take those steps, at least someone in the family system, toward healing. So if mom had substance use dependence and dad began to get help, is there a scenario where dad might say to a child this, begin to open up that conversation with that child that lets them know this isn't their fault, sort of joining with them in the understanding that this is not a situation that makes sense, right? And sort of validating that. But again, that takes someone in the family system beginning to make that shift, right?
Right, and absolutely. I mean, dad starts getting help. He understands what's happening. He can begin all kinds of tiny to big interventions with the children or the family, helping the children along the way. Another really good resource is resources for children, whether it's Al-Anon or Alateen or some type of support group or therapy or, some type of support for the child to help them understand.
They have an outlet to explore these feelings they're having, and that idea that 2 and 2 aren't adding up to 4.
Right. And there are quite a few programs, ACA, Adult Children of Addiction. There are quite a few programs for younger kids. I know there's several treatment centers that not only offer programs like that, but also offer it as part of their treatment if the person with the substance use dependence is in treatment as well.
And sometimes the person who is struggling with their substance use dependence does not move along that path toward their own health and wellness, right? And the family members, the rest of the family system at the same time, still has that opportunity to heal.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
I don't want to take you off course too much. But.
Oh, no, you're doing it's all good. So then you have silence, and anytime there's silence, it's like secrecy. I mean, you're left guessing. You have the parentification of children, which what the parentification of children is an adult putting a child in a place of acting more like an adult. So it's not so much the child being a child anymore, but, don't tell your teacher about what's happened at the blah, blah, blah. Don't talk about this at any place. Or, if your, mom asks for this or that, you need to show up and you need to do this for them, or you need to make sure, or if you can do this, this will help stabilize this will make your mom better. Those type of things are really, really talk about heavy loads. The younger the child is, the bigger that heavy load is. But at any age, asking a child to step in and take care of their unhealthy level can be really damaging. And many times the kids just take that on because, one, they may not know better. Two, they want the family system to be okay, right? They're working really hard for that family system to be okay. And if my dad told me, hey, if you do this, this, and this, it's going to make your mom much better, I would have completely done that. Especially if I was 10, 12, 15, I would have completely done that. I probably would have done it up into my 20s until I started understanding and getting help for, my own challenges. You have betrayal, unpredictability, you have the unknown. That can lead to trust and safety issues. After about I don't even know how many, I'll throw a number out, I don't know. After about maybe the 15th, 20th time that I was curious and I would ask these questions, and it never ended well. It never ended well with my mom. So I just stopped asking because it didn't feel safe and it didn't feel like I could trust that to have a good outcome. There was always a really, pretty challenging outcome to that. So I just kind of pulled back and just stuffed more, avoided more, didn't deal with more. All the fighting and arguing and toxic behavior. Some families, don't have this as much. Some families don't have the overt. Sometimes it's more covert. But anytime there is that unstable family system, it can be real challenging. So all of these things plus more, again, like I said earlier, this is just kind of a overview, or not an overview, it's just some of the things that really contribute to that formation of shame and get kind of leading to that place is something must be wrong with me. None of this is working and whatever, something must be wrong with me. So shame can be passed on in any flavor. It can be physically, emotionally, sexually, spiritually. Shame can be passed on to another member in the family in any way. And that can be real, when we take that on and we're carrying that, that can be very wounding for the individual.
Do you see that as a result of the shame that children experience, that one of their defense mechanisms or survival skills, that it's like overperforming?
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to talk about that. Just, with adult children of alcoholics, and there's been some research that's kind of interesting, there's lots of extremes. So one of the things that ends up happening with someone who's raised in a family of addiction, they either become, and this is, again, you cannot generalize everybody's going to fall in one of these two, but more often than not, they'll fall in overachieving or underachieving. And there's lots of extremes that, the kids will fall into. They don't know kind of what is in the normal realm, and they operate more in the extremes. So a lot of times when I see a client and I start doing shame work, one of the ways that they identify their shame is more physically in the body. They can't name it. They can't put a feeling word on it. Even if I give them a feeling chart, sometimes that's really difficult for them. But we talk about what it feels like in the body, because shame in the body is pretty pronounced. I mean, a lot of times, like I do a men's group, and in that men's group, they'll talk about, they call it a shame spiral, that they're experiencing a shame spiral. And that means that they just get into they get triggered by something or challenged by something and they get into this spiral of feeling really challenged to be able to step out of that. Yeah, so in the body, it's usually a pretty significant feeling, this feeling of heaviness, of being hot or warm, like your body might have this sensation of just, feeling very warm. And it may come on really suddenly. All of a sudden, you just feel this, and you feel a little emotion connected to it. More often than not, that's probably or can be a shame spiral or getting triggered by the shame. Other symptoms include some people in their shame will just shut down and retreat and withdraw. Other people act out. I call it kind of some will bow up and some will shrink. And it really depends on the person's personality. Sometimes people will do both of those in different situations depending on what the situation is. Tight throat, chest hurts, stomach in knots, queasiness, detached from the body is another symptom or another characteristic of what shame can feel like. Anxious and restless. So in the body, a lot's going on, and many times over years and years of carrying shame, people are kind of disconnected from this. Sometimes I'll have a client come in and they can really understand their shame through these symptoms. Other times it takes, months and months to get them in touch with their shame and know that they are safe in doing so. Let's go back. Okay. So long-lasting effects. There's so many of these. I don't know how many on here, maybe 12. There's so many long-lasting effects if, the effects of addiction are not treated and addressed. There are so many long-lasting things that can interfere with a person's adult life. There's chronic self-doubt. I see this a lot in clients, and I see this just constant questioning themselves. But think about it. Think about the example that I gave you about, my mom's saying A, B, and C, and I'm seeing LMNOP, right? The questioning started way young, right? That questioning started when I was, whenever I was, 8 or 9 years old. That questioning doesn't start as an adult. That self-doubt started at a very young age as a child. Not good enough. That's probably when I work with clients in recovery from their substance use, that's probably the number one thing that clients come in and talk about is this not feeling good enough. Many clients that have substance use dependence have at least one family member one parent that had substance use. Not all, but it's not uncommon for sure. Over or under functioning, being out of balance, boundary struggles. I don't know that I've ever worked with someone who had really healthy boundaries because you just don't know, right? You don't know what you don't know. And I remember the first time that I was in my 20s and I sought out counseling because I was experiencing a lot of this that we're talking about. I sought counseling, and I remember the counselor saying to me, "Laura, maybe you should consider going to an AA, an Al-Anon, an ACA meeting." And I remember thinking, no, not really. I just need all these people in my life to be better. And if all these people would get their stuff together, I would be okay. And I really remember thinking that. And I just had no idea about my mom's alcoholism and about our family system. And it took a number of years for me to really get a much deeper understanding and to see the impact it had on my life. Another symptom, I see this a lot, is the attraction to what is familiar, going back to kind of some of these dysfunctional patterns. And we could spend an entire evening talking about that because there's a lot of psychology in why why a person will go back to these dysfunctional patterns. You hear people say, yeah, I was raised in an alcoholic family and now I'm dating the alcoholic and now I, have a husband who's alcoholic and now, yeah, there's some really good reasons why that happens. Don't have a lot of time tonight to go into it, but it's there. Internal critical voice, concern or constant attempts to manage how others see you, right? You're constantly wanting to, make sure that somebody doesn't see the shame. One of the things with shames too, another one of the physical symptoms is don't see me. You don't want people to see you. You only want them to see you in a certain way. When you're carrying shame, the last thing you want anybody to do be able to see through you and see that shame. That is really, really uncomfortable.
How vulnerable.
Oh, gosh. You can't really.
A 12 out of 10.
Yeah.
15 out of 10.
Yeah, it is. It's incredibly vulnerable, especially when you have like a zero lack of awareness of what's happening. If you have some awareness, anytime we have awareness, self-awareness is key. If we have some self-awareness, we then have the ability to step in and have that look a little bit different, or sometimes a lot different with that self-awareness, depending on how deep your self-awareness is. You have barriers to intimacy, all kinds of problems around relationships, living in survival mode versus authenticity, the chameleon syndrome, and that is just like, whatever you need me to be, I'll be. And the reason for that really is at the end of the day, this is really about a loss of self. God intended a person or your higher maker, your higher power, your creator intended for you to be this beautiful person, right? And with all of this stuff that we just talked about, that's kind of hard to be, right? I mean, how authentic can you be in any of these things? It's not uncommon when a person comes in that we spend time just reclaiming their authenticity, reclaiming who they are.
Can I pause you for a minute?
Yeah.
That phrase feels so beautiful, reclaiming your authenticity. It feels empowering.
Yeah, absolutely, because it truly is. I mean, and that's what's so beautiful is because that gift is there for anybody. It's not okay, you get it, you don't. It's there for anybody. The gift of reclaiming that authenticity is there for anybody.
And that phrase says it's always been there.
Yeah.
It's always been there. You get to reclaim it.
Right. And sometimes, I mean, if you grew up in an alcoholic family and you're 2 years old or what, you probably don't have a lot of awareness around your authenticity. You get into adulthood and you're still doing the chameleon thing and don't see me and hi, all these things. You don't have a very good idea of what authenticity is, but it is part of the journey of healing. Amen. Yes. All right, let's talk about healing, and then we're going to jump into some questions. So I've talked about awareness. It's huge. Name it to tame it. I want to talk about one thing around that. And I have clients that have had this experience, and I've learned over time. You have to be very cautious about name it and tame it and talking about it and coming out of the silence, because sometimes there's places that aren't the right place to do that. And I'll have clients many times, they're like, oh, I got my authenticity, I'm going to go talk to my mom. You really need to take some steps back and talk to 2 or 3 people about that and see if that's the right place to do that. Or talk to somebody that might be real judgmental. You don't want to do that either. You really want to name it to tame it with people that are safe and that can really understand your story. because you just got finished growing up in a family that nobody really understood the story, right? You don't want to recreate that. Okay, bring it out of secrecy, connect in a healthy way, externalize it. Externalize it means, we internalize that shame. When you can become aware of it and you have that awareness in the moment, when you can externalize it, meaning, wow, shame spiral, this is not mine to hold. Just those words, or giving yourself permission, I don't have to do this, is huge. The other thing with awareness that's so important, when we hit a shame spiral, and everybody's a little bit different on this, but I would say on the average, it's right around on a 1 to 10, it's around a 6. When someone hits a 6 in the shame spiral, the frontal cortex, our reasoning, that part of the brain kind of goes offline, and we revert back to some really powerful, all these things that we're talking about, and we really don't have access to this frontal cortex to give us some good reasoning. Awareness helps with that tremendously, because as we get more aware, we can pump the brakes and make sure the part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, stays online so we can react in the way that we want to. Grieve the losses, practice self-compassion. It's so funny right now in our men's group, we are, all the men, I have them on this big journey of self-compassion and practicing self-compassion, and it's been great. They've really been doing pretty good with it, but not used to it. Many of the men in there came from alcoholic homes. Many are in recovery. But it's beautiful to watch that, less self-judgment. Set healthy boundaries. Determine what belongs to who. Give yourself permission to get out of the unhealthy system. I talked about the young children. There's all kinds of wonderful exercises of rewriting your narrative. All of these things have about 10 tentacles attached to them, therapeutic ways that you can help, let go of the shame. I suggest for people on the awareness, questions to self are the bomb. They are so incredibly helpful. People who are watching virtually, people in the audience, you guys being here, you're already having more awareness than you had an hour ago, right? For any change to happen, awareness has to start, but if your body physically is not open to that awareness or open to the change, you're going to have a lot of pushback in it, and it's going to be really difficult. So I always suggest with my clients, not always, most of the time. I mean, some people come in very, very open, but most people come in very timid, and so we start with some opening exercises, and all that looks like is asking questions. I wonder if I, have to carry the shame all my life. I wonder what this looks like. What would it look like if, and you're not going for answers here. You're going for your body to open up. You're just going for your mind and your physical body to be more open to the possibility of change. Consider support groups and therapy. For whatever reason, this is such a difficult, when I have clients and I'm working with clients, getting them to go to a support group, an ACA meeting, or an Al-Anon meeting, or whatever, is so difficult. Is so going to that first meeting. Once people kind of go a couple times, if they hit the right meeting, it does seem to be easier. But I mean, I can relate to that. The first ACA meeting I ever went to, I went and I drove around the parking lot and left. I thought, oh, that's not happening. The second time I went inside and I saw this circle, and it was all women's meeting, and I saw the circle and I was like, no. And I left. And the third time I went, I finally sat down and, ACA changed my life. I mean, it was a huge part of my healing process. And then I said, read to help to understand. I'm telling you, when I started the process of healing from my mom's alcoholism, I became this voracious reader. Any book I could, I would pick up and I'd read. I went and saw Claudia Black. I went and saw Terry Kellogg and John Bradshaw. You can tell I've been doing this a while because those guys are old. There's new authors, but back then in the 80s, that it was pioneer, and it was just they had some great support and great help. Shame, what kills shame the most? Connection, empathy, and speaking about it. Those three things are finding that safe place, having empathy for yourself, having empathy for others, and then each topic, healing strategy, tidbit of information that we discussed today is a beautiful beginning and is essential for the overall process. It's important to know that healing is both knowledge, which is our head, and our heart. And the heart, many times people start healing with the head, and that's important. We have to, again, that's awareness, but for true healing to really happen, there has to be an emotional component to that. And that looks different for different people. But it is an important piece to remember that that's a part of the journey. And then releasing shame is not betrayal, it's a transformation. Many people, the pushback a lot of people get is because they feel like they're going to betray. It took me a long time to talk openly about my family's addiction. And I'm still pretty cautious about that. I do it in my safe places, but it took me a while to do that. I felt a lot of betrayal to my family, so it's not an easy thing to do. We need to remember that. Okay, I'm going to pause there. Let's open up for questions.
Thank you, Laura.
You're welcome.
So, does anyone out in the audience, or I don't know, can we take questions from online as well? Super. Any questions?
How about you guys out there? Anybody have any questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. And I'm like you, I forget all the questions that I had as they come up, but hopefully I can remember a couple of them. One of the things, I'm recently become sober, about 7 months ago. And,
Congratulations.
Thank you. But it's concerning my family. I have a child who's 16, and I like the piece that you're in, a child who's 14, and you talked about secrets and the impact and that, but at the same time, the thought process to me was there was events that led to my sobriety that I have not made them aware of. And I'm thinking that I'm not ready for them to know how deep it went, and to the point of death. So I want to get your thoughts on sharing that journey with children, because that alone, I think, could bring some shame to them.
Yeah.
I don't know. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it makes complete sense, and it's such a great question because you really don't want to do a lot of that parental dumping, right? Not healthy for kids. As they get older, your kids are getting older, and as they maybe even get a little bit older, one way you can approach that's really good is that I am in recovery and I had some struggles with whatever it is, and at any time you guys have questions and you want to know about that, I'm open and I feel comfortable talking to you about it, and leave it to them to come to you to ask those questions. Yeah. But just
Or sometimes it's possible they may or may not want more information. Right?
absolutely. Yeah, they may not. And you don't, yeah, there are times that it is better. Your 14-year-old doesn't need to know a lot of those details right now. Just doesn't need to know.
I think the other piece that kind of struck me along the same chord was that there were other events that they witnessed that not proud moments, right? These things happen, and I guess to try as a parent to put a little bit of, hey, this isn't to be shared. You know, my thought was it was more of a protective for them. It was more protective because you go to school and you tell them that your parent that this just happened. That's going to live with them for. I mean, you know, they're never gonna get away from it. Today's day and age, it's not like when. Sounds like we're around the same path growing up in the 80s. It's not the same. And
Yeah.
so that kind of struck me a little bit too.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah,
you
it makes
know,
a lot of sense. And it's a,
you know, this is something we don't share with other families. Make sure you don't share this.
right.
It was a
The
bad-
hard part about that, though, is that it really holds them to secrecy. Maybe it sounds a little bit more like we find a safe place to talk about that, and help them find a safe place, whether that's a therapist or whether that's you know, a family friend that's not super connected in a way that is going to, you know, someone you trust.
Well, they seem to be well adjusted and everything's going well. In a lot of ways, they're everything that I'm not, which I don't know how that happened, but I, you know, it's just thoughts that I had on when it's appropriate and to share. Maybe like as your mother was, you know, maybe there was a time that, I mean, you know, I don't know where I'm going with this, but it just felt like, you know, I wanted to protect them. It was more of a protection reaction than the other, but they're doing fine. They're quite aware that I don't drink anymore, which is good, and they're happy about that. But they don't know. They have no concept of how bad it actually got.
They probably, a lot of times too, they may not have a concept of it, but many times they will have a feeling of it.
Yeah.
They will hold the feeling. And again, they may not be able to articulate and say what the feeling is. It's just feeling. So I would just, you know, open the door that anytime you want to talk about it or anytime you feel like you need support or anything, you know, that this is a journey for me as well as our family. And anytime you guys need support, you know, I'm here and we'll figure it out. Just that reassurance will be helpful. Another question?
Thank you so much. I have so many thoughts going through my head as I think of the layers in my life. Growing up with a dad who would not say he's an alcoholic, but I grew up with all these long-term effects, and I know. And seeing I became an overachiever and my sister the underachiever, and wanting to have conversation, not necessarily with my dad about it, but maybe my sister. And then I look at generational. When my mom passed 16 years ago, I went to the bottle, and I'm now 13 years sober because it became a problem. Wow, my kids are 27 and 29. We've been through a lot. My daughter has come full face with what she thought of my drinking. How do I have conversation for them, to open for them to not feel the shame?
That's
It-
it's
It took
it's
me a
good-
long time to realize that my journey was mine and that theirs is theirs
Yeah.
and that their feelings are what they went through. And I went through a lot of work with a counselor to let that go.
Yeah, I would go more in the direction of kind of like we talked about just a minute ago of anytime you need support. I am open to talk about that, but if you'd like to seek out a counselor or, get more support in any other way, I'm happy to help you. But again, and reiterate your trust in them. I realize this is your journey, and, you're going to figure out what's best for you. Just know I'm here to help, you in any way that I can. That goes a long way. It goes a really long way. And you also step out of it. And you need to, as a parent with children that old, you need to step out of it and let them kind of navigate their journey. It's hard. Mama Bear really shows up. I know.
I'm working on it.
I got a Mama Bear too.
So when you talk about families maybe shining the light on everything and are there steps like families can take to kind of foster better communication?
Yeah,
or is it always going outside of the family to talk about it? Can it be done
yeah.
within
You
the
kn-
family?
It's such a great question, Russ. And one of the first things I tell my students when I teach the SUD class, well, first thing I'll say, okay, if you guys don't like messy, then this is not the field for you, because this is messy. And people want to know 1, 2, 3, and then check the box. And then substance use dependence is a real challenging, thing to deal with. And it's messy a lot of the time. And I think it's more about getting a little more comfortable, maybe a lot more comfortable with messy, and know if you're committed to stay in the process and continue to walk forward, that goes a long way with your kids. I may not always get it right. I may get it wrong sometimes. Please tell me if I'm, overstepping boundaries. But, definitely, definitely kind of that stepping back and just kind of, taking an overview of it is helpful. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. I was just thinking along the lines of, what families can do maybe to try to foster conversation about maybe what has gone on or what has,
Yeah.
and
I would ask the kids, do you want to have conversation around it? You sure don't want to try to foster these conversations and you've got no, I don't want to do that. I know you want me to heal and you want me to do it this way, but I don't want to do that. So I would ask the kids, what it's so important that you're invested in their well-being, not your well-being for them to get better. And that's a hard thing as a parent, everybody's going to heal, and the more that we're able to kind of pull away, the more space they have to come forward.
I think sometimes too, a couple of things are bubbling up for me. Is some of it depends on the age of the child.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I think that sometimes our actions as parents speak louder than our words. So sometimes it might look like, it may not look like an in-depth conversation. It may look like how we're showing up differently. My own self-disclosure as a mother of 2 adult children in long-term recovery and having substance dependency on both sides of my family, I noticed that when our family began to go through the healing process, and I was looking at my place in the family, in our family system, that the way I was showing up had more impact than the words I said for some time. After a while, when trust was built, a greater level of trust because of my actions, then I think we were able to, and my kids were in their 20s when we began our process, we were able to better heal because they needed me, even in their 20s, they needed to see me doing the things.
Yeah, that's such a great, modeling. 90% of what kids pick up on and take into their adulthood is from modeling, not by what parents say, but what they do and how they model. 90%. That's kind of scary if you're a parent. And,
A lot of responsibility.
It is. So, really what Julie said is so important of, how we show up is really important. Any last questions? Yes.
So I'm in a little bit of a different situation where my child's only 3, and he asks me questions of why is Daddy not here,
Mm-hmm.
and where is Daddy? And I try to let him speak on the phone with him, and I say Daddy's sick and he's trying to get better and so on. Okay, Daddy, so when you get better, you're gonna come back, right? But you can't promise that they're gonna get better. And you don't know where that thin line is of, like, am I giving enough information, just enough so I don't damage you along the way? Like, the only thing I can do is I can say, I'm here,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but, what do you do when it's a 3-year-old?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really difficult question. And I would do your best, learn more, do exactly what you're doing. But maybe even sometimes when we can let go of the outcome that we hold so tightly to, I hear parents say a lot, oh, and I don't want to mess them up, or I don't want to do this. End of the day, you're a parent, you're going to do something. It's just going to happen. I don't care who you are. You're just, if you're a parent, you're going to, do some things that you wish you had a mulligan or a do-over for. So 3's hard, but it sounds like, honestly, Audrey, you're doing a good job with just navigating it the best you can. It's a hard situation, right? Is there, again, it's messy. Is there a one-word answer that just, this will work, do it this way? No. There are some books. There's some really good books out now around for children that you could look into. Yeah, for sure. All right, any last questions?
Well, Laura, thank you so much for being here this evening. So many takeaways. The one that just keeps sticking with me is reclaiming your authenticity. And I think, even what we were just speaking to and about, I think if we can sit in that place of our own authenticity and it feels like a stronghold of, like, I'm doing the best I can with the tools I have now, and it won't ever be perfect. That can carry us forward. And like you said, trying to let loose of some of those expectations around the outcomes, right? And so just thank you for all of this evening.
You're welcome. Yeah. Thank you, and thank you for having me. Julie, thank you for being a great host.
It was
Appreciate you.
very much a pleasure.